9/11. In fact, Tom Kenny says, we arrived late Monday night and from FEMA, went right into action on Tuesday morning. Coincidence? How about Giuliani?
I went down to the scene and we set up headquarters at 75 Barclay Street, which was right there with the police commissioner, the fire commissioner, the head of emergency management, and we were operating out of there when we were told that the World Trade Center was going to collapse. And it did collapse before we could actually get out of the building. So we were trapped in the building for 10, 15 minutes and finally found an exit, got out, walked north, and took a lot of people with us.
We were told it was going to collapse, and 10 minutes later it collapsed. No high-rise building has ever collapsed due to fire. There was no indication that this building was going to collapse, other than the fact that somebody had planted explosives and knew it was going to collapse and planned to take it down. Is there expert corroboration?
If you've seen many of the managed demolitions where they implode a building and they cause it essentially to fall vertically because they cause all of the vertical columns to fail simultaneously, that's exactly what it looked like, and that's what happened.
It was live on television. I mean, just literally millions of people.
Van Romero, explosives expert and demolition expert. It's too methodical to be a chance result of airplanes colliding with the structures. My opinion is, based on the videotapes, that after the airplanes hit the World Trade Center, there were some explosive devices inside the buildings which caused the towers to collapse. Mike Taylor, demolition expert, in The New Scientist wrote, "It looked like a classic controlled demolition. The collapse of the World Trade Center towers mirrored the strategy used by demolition experts. The explosions at the higher level floors enabled the collapse to gain downward momentum." All three of these experts have withdrawn their statements or justified or qualified them in some way. In the case of Van Romero, he was given a huge financial federal contract. Structural engineers question the World Trade Center collapses. William Rice, "The prevailing theory would have us believe that each of the Twin Towers inexplicably collapsed upon itself, crushing all 287 massive columns on each floor while maintaining a free fall speed as if the 100,000 or more tons of supporting structural steel framework underneath did not exist." Even FEMA's structural engineer, Ron Hamburger, initially said, and later qualified, "It appeared to me that the charges had been placed in the buildings, and yet the official investigations never considered controlled demolition with explosives, despite all this evidence." New York Fire Department. "Many firemen know there were bombs in the buildings, but they are afraid for their jobs to admit it because the higher-ups forbid discussion of this fact." Paul Isaac, New York Fire Department. "I know 9/11 was an inside job, the police know it's an inside job, and the firemen know it too." So what did destroy the World Trade Center towers? Was it fire, jetliner crash, a highly unusual controlled demolition, a gravitational collapse, explosions, pancaking collapse? Well, what happens when we're confronted with this information? We've seen a lot of proof and a lot of evidence for controlled demolition that about 95% of you are convinced brought down the World Trade Center. Nevertheless, your worldview is not the same as it was 2 hours ago. We're shaken up by this information because I've shown that Al-Qaeda couldn't have planted these explosives in these highly secure buildings. We gotta really deal with this information, and there's different ways in which we deal with it. We can go into paralysis and have no action whatsoever. We go into a series of I understand this, defensive excuses and avoidance techniques such as, "Hey, our government would never do this to us. They've never done it before." Well, it turns out that false flag operations to gain access to other countries have been done to get us into every major war we've had back to the inception of this country. Well, I would have heard about it by now. Well, you're hearing about it now, okay? It's never too late to hear about it and to do something about it. And Barry Zwicker is going to talk to you about why you may not have heard about it by now. It couldn't have been kept a secret, all those people that must have been involved. Well, the Manhattan Project had a hell of a lot more people involved, and it was a very well-kept secret. I'm not an expert in controlled demolition. I'm not qualified to respond. Okay? Neither am I. But we have controlled demolition experts who have. And you've seen all the evidence. It's too horrible. I just don't want to think about it. That's what I did when I first heard about this. But you have to think about it. Your country, my country, depends on you thinking about this and doing something and moving out of paralysis. Don't say, I didn't see this stuff tonight. Don't avoid the debate. Don't go back to sleep. And don't become part of the problem. Let's find a way to move into action. Let's get informed. Get the information. Move past the paralysis. Work through our fears, our beliefs, our mindsets, based on the rational reaction that we can have to very scientific data, not upon our emotional reaction to our worldview being turned upside down. And let's support a new investigation. This is our responsibility as citizens. Now, unfortunately, it's not just the buildings. Wherever you go in the official story, you find holes, huge holes. Whether it's the airline flights, where the transponders were turned off all at the same time, and many other abnormalities that don't fit the official story. The NORAD stand down for an hour and a half, allowing the planes through. The hijackers, which aren't on the flight manifests, 8 of them are still alive, interviewed by the BBC, some of them. FBI obstruction of justice and the many FBI whistleblowers that have come forward. The stock market put options, which millions have been made on the flights of the fated airliners, the airliners, of the fated flights. Osama bin Laden, where we have one confessing and one denying. Are they two different people? One's stout, one's gaunt. Others have written many books and tapes, and you owe it to yourself to get informed. Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth don't go into all of this, but I wanted to bring it to your attention as a focus for your future research. The 9/11 Commission, with its massive conflicts of interest in the staffing, terrorist funding has been tied to the Pakistan government, our best friends. Afghanistan, a profit center for heroin production. The defense, oil, debt, insurance, and media industries whose profits soared by huge percentages and whose board members sit on each other's companies and industries such that they tend to move as a flock of birds for their own interests and not yours or mine. And the mainstream media blocking the truth of 9/11. What did William Colby say, the former CIA director? The Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, owns everyone of any significance in the major media. That's a hell of a statement to be made by the head of the CIA. In fact, it's true. The Operation Mockingbird started in the late 40s, and it was very successful. And who was involved in it? Frank Wisner.